I'm very much a servant leader, very humble to a detriment at times maybe, and sometimes hold back in fear that maybe what I say is not going to be right or sound stupid, or, you just not showing up the way I really wanted to. And it was that comment that changed everything.
Leadership is everywhere. In our work, in our family, in our community. We see leaders by their actions. We know their legacy. This podcast is about leaders, people just like you, doing amazing things every day. I hope these stories inspire you, they motivate you, and they fuel your leadership legacy. My name is Vicki Guy. Welcome to Ignite. Hi, and welcome to Ignite. Our guest today has made the leap from volleyball coach to sales management, and then back to coaching, but this time in the people business. Laura Leaton, Executive Director, Leadership Development, has proven that we don't necessarily need experience in an actual industry to be successful. What we do need is confidence in our skills that we learn along the way and the desire to continuously improve. We also discuss the power of belief, not only when someone believes in you, but when you believe in yourself. You won't want to miss this interview with Laura, and we'll be right back with Laura right after this break.
My name is Dana Morrison. I'm the IT Director at Grace Christian School in Raleigh, North Carolina. IT directors often hoard so much knowledge that it's hard for their team members to learn. IT Pro TV has given us the ability to level up our technicians to a point where they can decide, this is important for me to learn. I would recommend IT Pro TV to any IT team. It's just a great tool for any IT professional.
Welcome back to Ignite. We are here today with Laura Leaton. She is the Executive Director of Leadership Development in the pharmaceutical industry. Laura, welcome to Ignite.
Thank you, Vicki. I appreciate that. I'm excited to be here.
So happy to have you here. As an executive director working in leadership development in an industry that changes so rapidly, I know you see all types when it comes to leadership. So I'm wondering, just wanted to kick off our conversation today and talk a little bit about your role and how you help shape leaders in your industry.
Sure, yeah. So having been in this industry for about 16 years now, I've always been a leader in this industry. Prior to the pharma industry, I actually was a collegiate volleyball coach. So the leadership is pretty much in my blood. It's what I love. And being in this industry and being able to work across so many different business units with so many different strategies and so many different cultures, over the years we've grown and changed so much that you're merging cultures at all time. And I think leadership and leadership development really is about that. It's about empowering individuals to build a very strong culture that is consistent. And in working one-on-one with individuals, I think has been the most rewarding. Sometimes you think, well, I can't make a difference if you're in a company that's 3,000 people. But, I've realized over time that one at a time, one a day really makes a difference. And, what I've seen mostly is just the ability to slow someone down, get them to realize that their uniqueness and their authenticity is really what makes them a good leader, not having to fit a mold or be what they think the business wants them to be. And so really seeing that and them come into their own and these light bulbs come on has just been everything. It's so rewarding. So
pretty cool. Absolutely. And the whole premise of Ignite, this podcast, is to really tell stories about people that just do things every day in their lives. You don't have to have a title of a CEO, or you don't have to be, a famous executive, but we can lead where we are in every part of our lives. And it sounds like you're able to help other people do that in their lives. But I want to talk about you a little bit in terms of how you got to where you are. You said you were a volleyball player. Now, was that, tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in California, Los Angeles. So I grew up on the beach playing volleyball. Went to college and played volleyball in college, and then it was interesting. And this again is the power of someone believing in you before you believe in yourself. I had a mentor. I graduated from college. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and she said, "Well, you're a great coach." And I said, "Okay, well, I'll do that." So I got into collegiate coaching and had some amazing opportunities. I was able to actually build a women's volleyball program at the University of Arkansas from inception. There was no women's volleyball program there, so that was great. And then went to a few other colleges and just kind of got burnt out. I'm kind of all in at 100 miles an hour or zero. There's no middle ground.
Yeah.
And had a friend come in when I was at Purdue and say, I think you'd really like the pharmaceutical industry. And I thought, I don't know what is that? Doctors are really smart. I can't do that stuff. And she said, I think you would really like it. So interviewed, and before I knew it, I was in the pharmaceutical industry, loving it. And within about a year and a half, I was managing my own team, and kind of just worked my way up the ladder. Went into training, became a divisional manager, specialty, and was our regional director up until about a little over a year ago, and got into leadership development. And this is where I am. So, yeah.
Yeah, quite a journey for you. But I want to go back. You said something just a few minutes ago about when you were coaching, or before you started coaching, someone said to you, "You're a great coach." What did they see?
Wow, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think my passion. Um, I kind of had a little bit of a rough childhood, so it was always kind of a survivor mentality, but it was just a passion for everything I did. I was just curious. When I was in high school, my nickname was Confucius. I was always asking why. I always wanted to know why. I always wanted to understand, and then once I did, there was just like an energy and a passion behind it. I love just being in the moment. I think always a kid. I'll always be a kid. And I think the competitiveness was what brought that forward.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I just enjoy being around people and seeing, like I said, those light bulbs come on. Always have.
Mm-hmm. And those whys, those questions that you're asking, I bet that in coaching in a sport has definitely translated into what you do in the pharmaceutical industry as well.
Always. I don't think I realized when I was sitting with my friend when I was in the office at Purdue what transferable skills a college volleyball coach could have in the pharmaceutical industry. I just couldn't find the connection until I actually got into the world and realized there's so many transferable skills from athletics to the corporate America. The leadership in and of itself, communication, just the ability to be flexible, and in athletics, you have to be. But yeah, I didn't realize the transferable skills until I really got into it. And I think that's something that I speak to a lot of student athletes about right now is, they think a lot, I don't know what I'm going to do next. And I'm like, you'd be surprised that although you may not have a resume with a bunch of job roles on it, you have the behaviors and the skills that transfer beautifully.
Isn't that the truth for a lot of people that I know a lot of people that I've met and I've talked to that are trying to transition their career, they don't even realize what kind of skills they can bring to the table because it's just what they do. And then when they're trying to change directions dramatically, their confidence in those skills is not as strong because they're having to try to reframe it a little bit.
Right.
And it sounds like you were able to reframe it pretty quickly. Did you have somebody help you with that, or did you just dive in?
I had a lot of very good mentors, a lot of great leaders that I worked with that were able to say, look, get out of your head. If you could do anything you wanted to right now in this situation, what would you do intuitively? What would you do? And keep bringing me back to that. So, and 9 out of 10 times it was the right thing to do. But I think, we get in our own way. And I took that coaching cap off and I put this pharmaceutical cap on, and I sat there and I was like, I'm lost. I don't know what to do. So I had to take both caps off. Like, what would intuitively you do? So I remind myself of that often, especially now going out on my own here. The same thing happens. It's like, I'm going to take this cap off. And it's like, no, it's the same thing, So I have to remind myself that often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you've had a very successful career in the pharmaceutical industry, all with pretty much one company, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All with one company. Yeah.
And you've used some of those transferable skills that you had in coaching and you've brought it to your career and you've had a ton of success. Is there one or two things that you would think that when you look back on it, you say, those are the one or two things that I did consistently, maybe without even thinking about it, that helped guide my success over time?
Yeah, I say first and foremost, it was my relationships with the people that I worked with. Um, just the authenticity and the vulnerability I had to connect with them. It was fun. I didn't realize I was doing it at the time. I just am a very transparent person. And I think when you show that humility and that vulnerability, it resonates with people and the connections are a lot tighter. And when those connections are tight, people are willing to get out of their comfort zone. And I think that if I had to really put a finger on it, that would be the biggest, was those relationships, through good, bad, and ugly, right? Those relationships get you through that. And I'm competitive. Um, it's different now. I think that's been a big evolution for me, just the whole word competitive. I like to win, but I like accomplishment more, I think. And I think always knowing that we're doing something with a purpose and that we're accomplishing something seem to always work out. And then you couple that with the relationships you have, and before you know it, you're succeeding and you're having fun doing it and you don't realize it. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. I always think about when people tell me they love to win, I always think about, it's kind of cheesy, that quote from the movie, when they say if you're not first, you're last, right?
Yeah.
So there
Yeah,
is
was
that.
Ricky Bobby or whatever?
Yes, yes. And, there is that competitive mentality that we have to win and we have to do. And if that's part of how we're made, it's really hard to kind of step back and take a look at the accomplishments and be happy with those. So having that type of personality where you're competitive, you grew up in sports, you entered into an industry that's very competitive, where only the strong survive, right? So there's a lot of pressure to perform and a lot of pressure to demonstrate capabilities and knowledge. So how did you make that transition for yourself to say, okay, I want to win, but I want to just appreciate the accomplishments along the way as well?
Yeah. Gosh, I'm not sure I've arrived there. um, I've learned that driving and that competitiveness can be exhausting at times. And I think I started a lot of self-reflection and realizing like what is most important to me. Is it that win, or is it what else could it be along the way? And basically just spending a lot of time reflecting. I also had some great mentors as well that said, you know, Laura, stop. Look what you're doing. Look what you've done. Look who you've impacted. And just really slow me down to be able to see that. But it's not an easy thing. Even now, it's not an easy thing. But I think I've defined my competitiveness differently now. It's more about watching others grow and succeed. And like I said, I keep saying, see the light bulb come on, because it's just like the best moment ever when something clicks and someone gets it, or someone comes back and says, I remember that one thing you said 2 years ago and it's made the difference. And you're like, I don't even remember what I said. But those are the wins for me now, so it's a little bit different. And, I don't know, maybe because I'm getting older, it's a little bit different, things change and you look at things differently.
We become a little bit nostalgic as well, like those comments, right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just for our listeners, we're talking to Laura Leaton. She is an executive director of leadership development in pharmaceutical industry. But Laura, you had mentioned that you're making a transition. Tell us a little bit about what's next for you.
Yeah, so I am going to be leaving corporate America after 16 years.
Scary?
I guess you can, yeah, it's scary. You can tack the coaching onto that too, because it was kind of a safe place, even though it was competitive. It was safe. And it's funny how I always compare corporate America as safe. I'm not sure that's even the right word anymore, but I've decided to go out on my own. I bought a business coaching franchise. And so I'm going to be doing some executive coaching and some leadership workshops and even some speaking anytime I can get an opportunity to. And just be able to use that as a platform now to really kind of take all the creativity I have and the experience I love, and to be able to put some structure around it. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, it can be exciting and scary at the same time, right? But just forging ahead definitely makes a difference. I'm wondering, from your experience in the pharmaceutical industry and perhaps even in the coaching the students, has there been a situation or a time that you can think of that's kind of defined your coaching style?
Yeah, let me think about that.
I know I've put you on the spot here with this
Yeah,
question,
yeah.
but
Um, yeah,
there are some times in our lives where we have one or two people that just make such a huge impact, and they may change the way we think about things, the way we approach things, and I think in the coaching world, it might even impact the way you help guide somebody through their own self-discovery. So I'm
yeah.
wondering if there's one or two things that you can share with us from your own experiences.
Yeah, something comes to mind that is really came about in the pharmaceutical industry. And it didn't happen too long ago, actually. I think it's part of this transformation over the last several years. I had a VP that I think the world of, and sat down with her to do my annual review. And I was on the top of the mountain at the time, winning. Everything was great. And she looked at me and she said, it's time you act like you belong here.
Oh,
And I was kind of like, wow, I'm not sure how to take this. And after a little reflection, I understood what she was talking about. I'm very much a servant leader, um, very humble to a detriment at times, maybe, and sometimes hold back in fear that maybe what I say is not going to be right or sound stupid, or, you just not showing up the way I really wanted to. And it was that comment that changed everything for me, because it just made me realize, I am here. I do deserve to be here. And it changed my whole mindset. So I think that alone not only changed how I showed up in leadership, but it started the whole transformation with me really understanding that showing up authentically and just being who you are is really what resonates with people most. And I think I've gotten more validation from that over the last several years than probably I ever have in any leadership or coaching that I've ever done. Yeah.
what does that look like? When you say you got validation from
Yeah.
that, are there things that you do differently now once you've kind of thought about that in a little bit of a different way? Have you done something and had someone react in a certain way that you're like, okay, that works, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting and it's in retrospect, but I've found that the more authentic I show up, meaning the more I just share my thoughts and feelings and I don't hold back and I do what I want to do, not worrying about what anybody's going to think. I'm finding a lot more of the individuals around me are doing the same thing. So that's the cool part about it. I've seen young women who never wanted to get into leadership or were very reserved in meetings now really showing up, being promoted into our programs. They never would have done that before. So it's interesting how you don't really have to say a word. There was a mindset that allowed me to show up. And then I started seeing people around me say, you know what? It's okay to do that. Like that's the right thing. And then before you know it, you have a lot of empowered people around you. And that, I mean, it's magical.
Hmm. How does that impact your confidence?
Oh, tenfold.
Yeah.
I think because, it's as competitive as I was and as successful as I was, I always did. I was kind of worried, was I doing it right? Or was I doing it the way they wanted me to do it? Was I saying it the way I should have said it, or what have you? And once I started to stop worrying about that and just being, um, it's a different feeling. It definitely increases my confidence level. Yeah.
Yeah. Before I started doing this podcast, I started thinking, well, what if people don't like it? Or what if they, criticize this or that? And then finally I had to get to a point where I thought, oh, well, right? Because it's a passion. And I've met so many cool people like you over the course of my career that I just want to share their stories. And I had to get to that point. So I completely can appreciate that level of confidence when you just decide to show up and do what you want to do. Yeah. Absolutely. So during this transition for you and your next steps, what will you do the same or what will you be doing differently to tackle this next chapter for yourself?
Yeah, I think I'll start with the easy, the same.
Okay.
Well, definitely, my passion is what's gotten me here, right? So There's no need to hold back. And I think I've learned a lot over the last several years that have really, it's strange to look back. I think that's why it happened, because there was something coming that needed that confidence and that needed that creativity to come out and not hold back. So I think, my motor's never going to slow down. It's just it's in my DNA. But the ability to stay authentic, stay true to myself, and just keep putting myself out there is what I'll definitely keep doing the same, no doubt. I think doing differently, there's a lot, I think I'm learning and evolving as I go. I would say one thing is I have the tendency to get caught up or anxious if a lot's going on and I can't figure out what to do next. And I think one thing that I'm really working on right now is to kind of know when to take that breath, exhale, and walk away for a little bit, or know when 80%'s enough. 80% accurate, that's good. Go. Because I think a lot of times I wait till it gets to that 100% before I'll take a step forward. And I could be sitting here forever if that was the case. So I think that would be really moving forward into the next year. What I would do is know that, 80% accurate, go for it.
Mm-hmm. And maybe even lower. I can tell you that I have been talking to a lot of different entrepreneurs about just this topic. And one of the things I hear over and over is you don't have to have all the answers. You don't even have to have all the resources. You don't even have to know exactly what it's going to look like on the other side. You just have to have that passion and that drive, and just then give it the spark, and it figures itself out. And I've been surprised because I'm probably a lot like you, where I've always wanted to kind of have that plan of what it's going to look like. But the entrepreneurs that I talk to, they say they don't wait for that. They just act, and it can be a little bit scary for those of us that are planners.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder. It's a great reminder.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask you one final question about your role kind of back in leadership development and then moving forward into coaching. For people that are wanting to develop their leadership capabilities and they want to become a leader in their own right, where they're at, or grow in their career, is there a piece of advice that you would share, or some insight that you've seen over time that you think would be helpful, just as general advice to somebody that's listening?
Yeah. I would say one that sounds kind of boring, but read. Read. I mean, learn and read as much as you potentially can. And one thing I did probably about 2 years ago was every morning I would get up and I would link in with one person a day. So I get on LinkedIn, and I knew that I wanted to learn more about a certain area. It could have been maybe virtual learning. And so I would get on LinkedIn and I'd find someone that had that background. I'd link in with them and I'd introduce myself. And before I knew it, I was talking to people, met people, and now have a whole network of individuals that have actually helped me with my own skills in certain areas. But I had to create that kind of village for myself. And it took just one person every morning with my cup of coffee, and people from all over the world now. That it's really neat to have as mentors. So I would say just keep learning and put yourself out there. And it's interesting. It's a new world is created.
Yeah.
So
one step at a time, it sounds like, one connection at a time.
One connection at a time. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Laura, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your world with us today on Ignite. I really appreciate that. And hopefully you'll come back again in the future and I'll hear more stories about some of the coaching successes that you've had in your new chapter.
Yeah, I would love to.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Laura. In just a moment, we'll be back with some final thoughts on Ignite.
Enjoying Ignite? Then you'll want to check out Technado, another podcast from the IT Pro TV network. In each episode, hosts Peter and Don recap the week's top tech news and interview IT experts from around the globe. Learn more at itpro.tv/podcasts.
Great talking to Laura today. We have heard the power of leaning on what we call transferable skills. Especially in the gig economy that we live in today, we know it's critical to carry with us what we've learned. When we can use the skills that we've learned over time in new situations and we can show up, we can do amazing things. Thank you for joining us today on Ignite. Please follow us at Ignite Podcast on Facebook and on Instagram. From all of us at Ignite, I'm Vicki Guy.